Hana Kill stood at the massive window of Earth's orbital station, watching the stars that would soon become her home for the next 2 years. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman of 42 with tired eyes and hands that had signed too many death warrants. Behind her, the bustling noise of the spaceport continued, but her mind was elsewhere. "Mom, you're going to miss me, aren't you?" She turned to see her son Tay walking toward her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. At 16, he was already taller than her, with the same dark eyes but a smile that could light up the darkest corners of space. He handed her a cup, and she noticed his fingers were stained with metal dust again. "Have you been working on that project again?" she asked, pointing at his hands. Tay grinned and tried to hide his hands behind his back. "Maybe it's almost finished, you know. I think you'll be really surprised when you come back." Hana felt a knot form in her stomach. The Zenthari mission was important, too important for Earth's fragile position in the galaxy. The Velthran Empire controlled most of the known systems, and humanity was barely tolerated. This diplomatic mission could change everything, but it meant leaving Tay for 2 long years. "Tell me about this secret project," she said, sitting down on one of the metal benches. Tay's eyes lit up. "Well, I can't tell you everything, but remember how you always said that humans need to be smarter, not stronger?" "I remember. I've been working on something that proves that point. It uses gravity in a way no one has tried before. Dr. Yule says it could change everything about how we defend ourselves." Hana felt pride and worry fight in her chest. Her son was brilliant, too brilliant sometimes. In a galaxy where humans were seen as useful but weak, being too smart could be dangerous. "Tay, promise me something." "What?" "Be careful who you share your ideas with. Not everyone wants humanity to grow stronger." Tay nodded, but she could see he didn't really understand. How could he? He had grown up in the human colonies where people spoke freely. He didn't know what it was like to sit in meetings where alien representatives spoke about humans like they were children who needed watching. The announcement came over the station speakers. "Transport ship Morningstar now boarding for deep space departure. All passengers report to Dock 7. Hana stood up and hugged her son tightly. He smelled like metal and electronics and that cheap soap he insisted on using. She tried to memorize the feeling. 2 years, she whispered. 2 years, he agreed. "But I'll have something amazing to show you when you get back. Something that will make you proud." She was already proud, but she didn't say that. Instead, she grabbed her travel bag and walked toward the boarding gate. At the entrance, she turned back one more time. Tay was waving, that huge smile still on his face. The Morningstar was one of humanity's newest ships, built with a mix of human engineering and Velthran technology. It was fast but not impressive. The Empire preferred to keep human ships that way. As Hana settled into her cabin, she pulled out the mission files. The Zenthari Collective was a mystery. They lived beyond the galactic rim, in systems that most species avoided. For 20 years they had ignored all attempts at contact. Then suddenly they had sent a message. They would speak with one human representative and only one. The message had caused chaos in the Velthran capital. Why humans? Why now? The Empire had demanded that any human diplomat be accompanied by Velthran observers, but the Zenthari had refused. It would be one human alone or no meeting at all. That's how Hana had gotten the job. She was respected enough to handle the mission, but not important enough for the Empire to worry about. At least that's what they thought. As the ship pulled away from Earth's orbit, Hana opened a secure communication channel. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, sending coded messages to old friends scattered across the galaxy. Most people saw these messages as simple updates from a traveling diplomat. Only a few people knew they were activation codes for something much larger. The messages went to Jin, who ran a small trading company near the Velthran core worlds. To Nari, who worked as a cultural researcher on 3 different alien planets. To Kai, who fixed ships in the Outer Rim territories. To dozens of others who seemed like ordinary humans living ordinary lives. None of them were ordinary. Years ago, when Hana had first realized how the Empire really viewed humanity, she had begun planning. Not for war, she hoped it would never come to that, but for the possibility that one day, humans might need to defend themselves in ways the galaxy couldn't imagine. The silent protocol was her life's work. A network of humans in key positions, resources hidden in forgotten places, and plans that even the human government didn't know about. It was insurance against the day when being useful and weak wouldn't be enough to keep humanity alive. But as she watched Earth disappear behind them, All she could think about was Tay's smile and his promise to surprise her. The journey to Zenthari space would take 6 months. Then 18 months of negotiations if they went well. Then 6 months home, 2 years total. She had calculated it perfectly. She had no way of knowing that in 18 months the Velthran Empire would decide that Tay's surprise was too dangerous to allow. She had no way of knowing that her son's brilliant mind would make him a target. She had no way of knowing that when she returned to Earth, everything she cared about would be gone, but the silent protocol would remain, waiting for her to wake it up. As the morning star jumped to faster-than-light travel, Hana settled back in her chair and began reading about the Zenthari. She had a job to do and she would do it well. After all, she was just a diplomat on a peaceful mission. The galaxy had no idea what else she was. 18 months after his mother left Earth, Tay Kill worked alone in his laboratory deep beneath the city. The room was small and cluttered with half-finished machines, holographic displays, and coffee cups that had been forgotten for days. But in the center of it all sat his masterpiece. The gravity disruptor was no bigger than a baseball, but it hummed with power that made the air around it shimmer. Tay smiled as he made the final adjustments. His mother would be so proud when she saw what he had built. "Computer, run test sequence 47, he said. A metal cube appeared in the testing chamber. The disruptor powered up with a soft whine and suddenly the cube wasn't there anymore. It hadn't exploded or melted. It had simply stopped being a cube. The atoms that had been holding hands to make metal were now floating free, turning back into basic elements. Tay whooped with joy and spun around in his chair. It worked. After 2 years of calculations and failures, he had actually done it. He had created a weapon that could unmake anything at the level of atoms themselves. But as he celebrated, a nagging thought crept into his mind. Dr. Yule had been asking strange questions lately. Questions about how the weapon worked, who else knew about it, and whether Tay had shared his research with anyone. Tay pulled up his research files and began copying them to a hidden drive. His mother had always taught him to be careful, and something about Dr. Yule's recent behavior made him nervous. As he worked, his computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from his friend Bin, who worked in the government communications office. "Tay, you need to see this. Can you meet me at the old cafe in an hour? Come alone." An hour later, Tay sat across from Bin in a corner booth of their favorite cafe. Bin looked nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. "What's going on?" Tay asked. Bin slid a data tablet across the table. "I wasn't supposed to see this, but I was routing some files and accidentally accessed the wrong folder. Look at this." Tay looked at the screen and felt his blood turn cold. It was a communication between Earth's government and the Velthran Empire. The message was about him. Subject shows dangerous potential. Recommend immediate intervention before technology spreads. Suggest accident or natural causes to avoid suspicion. Tay's hands shook as he read further. The messages went back months. The Velthrans had been watching him, and worse, people in Earth's own government were helping them. "There's more," Bin whispered. "They've been doing this for years. Any human who gets too smart, who invents something too advanced, they disappear. Car accidents, lab explosions, sudden illnesses. The Empire has been keeping us weak on purpose." "Who's involved?" Tay asked. Bin showed him more files. Director Yunpak, the head of Earth Science Council. General Sora Kim, who commanded the Home Defense Fleet. Dr. Yule, Tay's own mentor. Dozens of others, all taking Velthran money to keep humanity from growing too strong. "They're planning something for you," Bin said. "Soon, maybe in the next few days." Tay sat back in his chair, his mind racing. His gravity disruptor could change everything for humanity, but only if people knew about it. If he disappeared, the research would disappear with him. "I have to warn everyone," he said. "How?" "They control the communications. They control the government." "Who are you going to tell?" Tay thought about his mother, somewhere in deep space. She had always been smart about these things. She would know what to do, but she was too far away to help. "I'll broadcast it myself," he said finally. "If I can get to the main communication array, I can send the truth to every human colony at once." Bin shook his head. "That's suicide. They'll stop you before you get halfway there." "Maybe, but if I don't try, they win. And next time it might be you or your sister or anyone else who gets too smart for their comfort." That night, Tay loaded his research onto dozens of data drives and hid them around the city. He sent encrypted copies to his mother's old friends, people she had taught him to trust. Then he prepared for what might be his last day alive. He almost made it. Tay managed to reach the communication center and began uploading his files to the broadcast system. For 10 minutes, his evidence went out to human colonies across the galaxy. The proof of Vialthron control, the names of the traitors, and the plans for his own murder. Then the security forces arrived. Dr. Yule led them personally. The man who had taught Tay everything about engineering now pointed at him like he was a criminal. Tay Kill, you're under arrest for terrorism and treason against the human species. Terrorism. Tay laughed even as they put chains on his hands. I'm trying to save us. You're trying to start a war, Dr. Yule said coldly. Your weapon could destroy entire worlds. Your broadcast will anger the Empire and bring destruction down on all of us. They dragged Tay to a holding cell, but he could hear the commotion outside. His broadcast had worked. People were asking questions, demanding answers. For a moment, he felt hope. Then Director Yunpak visited his cell with bad news. The Empire has decided to make an example of you, he said. A public trial and execution. They want every human to see what happens to those who threaten galactic peace. Peace? Tay spat. You call slow genocide peace? I call it survival. Humanity exists because we know our place. You would have destroyed that. The trial was held 3 days later. Tay stood in chains before a Velthran judge while cameras broadcast to every human world. The charges were terrorism, weapons development, and conspiracy against galactic stability. Tay was allowed to speak for 5 minutes before the sentence. He used every second. They're killing me because I proved humans can be more than servants, he said, looking directly into the camera. They're afraid of what we might become if we're allowed to grow. Don't let my death be meaningless. Remember that we are capable of great things if we're brave enough to try. The execution was quick. A Velthran energy weapon turned Tay into nothing but light and memory. The official statement said he had died in a laboratory accident while working with dangerous materials. But across the galaxy, humans had heard his real words. And somewhere in deep space, a message began its long journey to reach a ship called the Morning Star. Tay Kill was dead, but his ideas would live longer than the empire that killed him. His mother just didn't know it yet. The Morning Star dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, and Hana Kill felt her heart lift for the first time in 2 years, home, after 18 months of careful negotiations with the Zenthari, who had turned out to be surprisingly reasonable once you understood their language. She was finally coming home to see Tay. The Zenthari had given humanity something precious, star maps to uninhabited systems beyond Velthran space, and the promise of trade agreements that didn't require Empire approval. It was a good deal, maybe the best deal humanity had ever made. Tay would be so proud. But as the ship approached Earth's orbital station, Hana noticed something wrong. There were too many Velthran ships in dock. Military ships, not the usual trade vessels. Her soldier instincts woke up and started asking questions. Captain, she called to the ship's commander. What's the situation planetside? Captain Dan looked uncomfortable. There was some trouble while you were away, Commander. Some kind of terrorist incident. The Empire sent additional security to help keep the peace. Hana's blood went cold. What kind of incident? I don't know the details. Just that a young man tried to attack government facilities. He was stopped, but there was damage. The official reports will tell you more. The first thing Hana did after docking was try to call Tay. His number went straight to a message saying the line was disconnected. She tried his laboratory, his school, even his favorite cafe. Nothing. Finally, she called Dr. Yule. Hana, welcome back. His voice sounded strange, too careful. I was hoping to speak with you. Where's Tay? I can't reach him anywhere. There was a long pause. I'm afraid I have bad news. There was an accident in his laboratory about 6 months ago. A power overload in one of his experiments. I'm so sorry, Hana, we lost him. The words hit her like bullets. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor of the space station. Around her, people continued walking and talking, but their voices seemed to come from very far away. Tay was dead. Her son was dead. But even through the shock and pain, something in her mind was still working. Something that had kept her alive through 30 years of military service was asking questions. Dr. Yule's voice had been wrong. Too practiced, like he had said these words before. And why hadn't anyone contacted her? Surely news of her son's death was important enough to send a message to deep space. 3 days later at Tay's memorial service, Hana stood in the front row wearing her dress uniform and listening to people talk about what a wonderful boy he had been. Director Yun Pak gave a speech about the dangers of unauthorized research and the importance of following safety protocols. But Hana was watching faces, listening to voices, using skills that most people didn't know she had. Dr. Yule wouldn't meet her eyes. Director Yun's speech sounded more like a warning than a memorial, and several people in the crowd kept glancing at the Vielthran observers in the back. After the service, as people were leaving, a young woman approached her. "Commander Kill, my name is Mira Song. I was Tae's friend." Hana recognized the name. Tae had mentioned Mira in his letters, a genetics researcher who had been helping him with some of his projects. "I'm sorry for your loss," Mira continued. "Tae spoke about you all the time. He was so excited about your return. Thank you." Mira glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. "There are things you should know. Things about how he really died. Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere private?" The next day, Hana met Mira at a small park outside the city. Mira carried a bag that looked heavy for its size. "I'm going to show you something," Mira said. "But first, you need to promise me that you'll be careful. There are people watching all of us now." She opened the bag and pulled out a data pad. Tae didn't die in an accident. He was executed by Vielthran security forces for terrorism. Hana felt the world tilt sideways. That's impossible. He had discovered something. About the Empire, about their plans for humanity. He tried to warn everyone and they killed him for it. Mira showed her the real news reports, the ones that had been broadcast briefly before being suppressed. She showed her video of Tae's trial, of his final speech, of his execution. "They're calling it an accident to prevent unrest," Mira explained. But thousands of people saw the real broadcast before they were cut off. Hana watched her son die on the small screen, and something inside her broke. But what grew in its place was far more dangerous than grief. What had he discovered? She asked, her voice perfectly calm. Mira showed her more files. Evidence that the Vielthran Empire had been systematically eliminating human scientists and inventors for decades. Proof that Earth's own government was helping them. Records of the slow poisoning of human colonies disguised as medical aid. "They're not just keeping us weak," Mira said. "They're slowly killing us off. In 50 years there won't be enough humans left to matter." And Tae found out. He found out and he built something that could have changed everything. A weapon that could have given us a real defense. Mira pulled out another device. "This is a copy of his research. I managed to hide it before they destroyed his laboratory." Hana took the device and looked at her son's final work. Even she could see that it was brilliant. A gravity disruptor that could unmake matter at the atomic level. In the right hands, it could destroy entire fleets or disable whole planets. "Who else knows about this?" she asked. "Just me. And now you. Everyone else who helped him is dead or disappeared." Hana stood up and walked to the edge of the park, looking out at the city where she had raised her son. In the distance, she could see Vielthran ships hovering over the government district. "Mira," she said quietly, "do you know what I did before I became a diplomat? You were in the military, right? I was the architect of the silent protocol, the plan that's supposed to keep humanity alive if we're ever threatened with extinction." Hana turned back to face her. "I think it's time to find out if it works." Over the next week, Hana began making calls. To old friends who ran trading companies in distant systems. To cultural researchers working on alien worlds. To ship mechanics and freight haulers and a dozen other people who seemed ordinary but weren't. Each call was short and seemed innocent. But each one contained code words that hadn't been used in 20 years. The silent protocol was waking up. In her apartment, surrounded by pictures of Tae, Hana began planning. Not just revenge for her son's death, but justice for every human who had been murdered or suppressed, or slowly poisoned in the name of galactic peace. The Empire thought they had eliminated a threat when they killed Tae. They had no idea that they had just created a much bigger one. Hana looked at her son's research one more time, then began designing something new. Not just a weapon, but a war. A war that would burn across the galaxy until everyone understood that humanity was done being weak. They had killed her son. Now she would show them what a mother's grief could do when it had the resources of 30 years of careful planning behind it. The galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things than an angry human. There were smart, angry humans who had been preparing for this day their entire careers. The message went out on a Tuesday morning. hidden in the routine shipping schedules that crossed the galaxy every day. To anyone monitoring the communications, it looked like a simple update about cargo routes and delivery times. But to the right people, it was something else entirely. Protocol Omega was active. On Velthran Prime, Jin received the message while he was loading supplies onto his cargo ship. He had been a trader for 15 years, moving goods between human colonies and alien worlds. Everyone knew him as a friendly merchant who always had a smile and a good deal. No one knew that his cargo ship carried military-grade weapons hidden in secret compartments, or that his trade routes had been carefully planned to position supplies where they would be needed most. Jin smiled and began making calls to his crew. It was time to stop pretending. On the research station orbiting Kepler 442, Dr. Nari was conducting her daily study of Veltron cultural artifacts when her computer chimed with an incoming message. She read it twice, then quietly walked to her office and locked the door. For 8 years, she had been the Empire's favorite human researcher, helping them understand ancient alien cultures. They trusted her completely, which is why they had given her access to their central archive system. Nari's fingers flew over her keyboard as she began downloading everything: fleet positions, defense codes, strategic plans, and most importantly, the locations of the Empire's gravity generation facilities. She uploaded a virus into their system before disconnecting. In 6 hours, every Velthron military computer would start experiencing technical difficulties. On the edge of the galaxy, Captain Kai was repairing an Empire patrol ship when his wrist communicator buzzed with a priority message. He read it while lying under the ship's gravity generator, surrounded by tools and spare parts. Kai had been fixing ships for 12 years. Velthran ships, human ships, even the mysterious vessels used by species no one talked about. Everyone trusted him because he was just a mechanic who kept his mouth shut and did good work. But every ship he had ever repaired carried a small modification that no one had noticed. A tiny device that could be activated remotely to disable key systems. Hundreds of ships scattered across the galaxy, all carrying Kai's special modifications. He activated them all. Within hours, Velthran patrol ships began experiencing power failures across 3 star systems. Not crashes. Kai wasn't a monster, but complete system shutdowns that left them floating helplessly in space, sending distress signals and waiting for rescue. Back on Earth, Hana sat in her apartment watching the news reports. Technical failures were being reported throughout Empire space. Ships were losing power, communication systems were malfunctioning, and several military bases had gone completely dark. The news reporters were calling it an unprecedented technical crisis. Hana called it Tuesday. Phase 1 complete, she said into her secure communicator. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was Tay's weapon. Over the past month, Hana had used her son's research to build a new type of gravitational disruptor. Not just one device, but dozens of small ones that could be hidden anywhere and activated remotely. Her people had been busy. Jin had used his trading routes to position the devices on 12 key Velthran worlds. Nari had provided the exact coordinates of the gravity generators that kept those worlds habitable. Other agents had done their part, each playing their role in a plan that had been 20 years in the making. At exactly noon, Galactic Standard Time, all 12 devices activated. On Velthran Prime, the massive gravity generators that maintained the planet's artificial gravity field simply stopped working. The effect wasn't immediate. Gravity didn't disappear all at once. Instead, it began fluctuating wildly, making it impossible for ships to land or take off safely. Within hours, the planet's entire population was evacuating to orbital stations. The same thing happened on 11 other worlds. Not destruction, not death, but chaos. Millions of Velthrons floating in space waiting for rescue, while their homeworlds became uninhabitable. But the real impact wasn't the evacuations. It was the message that came with them. As the gravity generators failed, every communication system on those worlds broadcast the same signal. Video of Tay's execution, followed by evidence of the Empire's genocide plan, followed by a simple statement from Hana herself. My name is Commander Hana Kill of the Human Defense Network. You killed my son because he discovered your plan to eliminate my species. This is our response. We are no longer your victims. We are no longer weak, and we are done hiding. Every world you have attacked can be saved if you meet our terms. You have 72 hours to respond. The message spread across the galaxy faster than the Empire could stop it. Within days, every species in known space had seen the evidence of Velthron, oppression and humanity's hidden strength. The response was immediate and chaotic. 3. Minor species that had been under Velthron control declared independence. The Zellan Republic, which had been neutral for centuries, offered humanity military support. Even some Velthron colonies began broadcasting their own messages, denouncing their government's actions, but the Empire's military response was swift and brutal. General Thakmor, the Empire's supreme commander, ordered immediate attacks on human colonies. If the humans wanted a war, he would give them one. Destroy their worlds, scatter their populations, and end this rebellion before it could spread. The first target was New Sol, a peaceful colony world with 2 million human settlers. The Velthron battle fleet arrived expecting to find a defenseless farming community. Instead, they found a fortress. The farming equipment that had been imported over the past decade transformed into defensive weapons. The agricultural satellites revealed themselves as military communication arrays, and hidden in the asteroid field nearby, a human battle fleet uncloaked and opened fire. The ships were built using technology that the Empire had never seen before, human engineering combined with improvements that had been quietly developed for 20 years. They moved faster than Velthron vessels, hit harder than expected, and used Tay's gravitational weapons to tear through Empire shields like they were made of paper. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Velthron fleet was completely destroyed, and not a single human ship had been lost. Similar battles erupted across the galaxy as the Empire tried to strike back at human colonies, only to discover that there were no defenseless targets. Every human world was armed and ready. Every trade route was protected by hidden fleets. Every seemingly innocent human outpost was actually a military stronghold. For 30 years, while the galaxy thought humanity was weak and scattered, they had actually been building the most advanced military network in known space. The Empire began to realize they weren't fighting a rebellion. They were fighting a war against an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for decades. On Earth, Hana stood in what had once been Tay's laboratory, now converted into a command center. Holographic displays showed battles raging across 12 star systems, supply lines being severed, and Empire worlds falling one by one. "Status report," she said to her communications officer. 17 Empire fleets destroyed or disabled. 23 worlds evacuated. The Velthron High Command is requesting negotiations. Hana looked at a picture of Ty that she had placed on the main console. "Tell them we'll consider negotiations after they surrender unconditionally and hand over everyone involved in my son's death." "And if they refuse?" Hana smiled, and for the first time in months it was a real smile. "Then we continue the demonstration. We have 11 more gravity disruptors ready for deployment, and our fleet commanders are getting bored with easy targets." The galaxy watched in shock as the mighty Velthron Empire, which had controlled known space for 3 centuries, began to crumble under assault from a species they had considered harmless. But this was just the beginning. Hana had bigger plans, and she was just getting started. Her son had died trying to protect humanity. Now she was going to finish what he started. 3 months after the first gravity disruptors activated, the Velthron Empire was dying. What had started as strategic strikes against 12 worlds had become a galaxy-wide conflict that the Empire was losing on every front. Human fleets appeared where they shouldn't exist, fought with weapons that shouldn't work, and disappeared back into space before reinforcements could arrive. Emperor Veltar sat in his war room on the fortress world of Cathera, staring at a star map that showed nothing but bad news. Red markers indicated systems under human control. Yellow markers showed worlds that were no longer responding to Imperial communications. Only a handful of green markers remained, scattered and isolated. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked his remaining generals. General Thakmor consulted his datapad. 47 battle fleets, Your Majesty, but most are trapped defending core worlds. The humans seem to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage." "Because they do know," said Intelligence Director Morden. "Our analysis suggests they've been planning this war for decades. Every human trader, researcher, and diplomat was actually a spy. Every trade agreement was actually intelligence gathering. They've been studying us this entire time." The Emperor slammed his fist on the table. How did we miss this? How did an entire species prepare for war without us noticing? Because we thought they were weak, General Thakmore admitted. We saw what they wanted us to see. Outside the fortress, alarms began wailing. Through the massive windows, they could see human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Not a raiding force, an entire battle fleet, bigger than anything they had seen before. On the lead ship, the Tai's Promise, Commander Hana Kill stood on the bridge watching the fortress world grow larger on the main screen. This was it. The final battle of a war that had consumed the galaxy for 3 months. "Ma'am," called her tactical officer, Lieutenant Bin. "The fortress is hailing us. Put them through." Emperor Veltar's image appeared on the screen. He looked older than Hana remembered from the diplomatic meetings before her son's death. "Older and tired and defeated, Commander Kill," he said. "I want to negotiate." "You can negotiate with my son," Hana replied coldly. "Oh wait, you can't. You killed him. That wasn't my decision, but you allowed it. You benefited from it. You stood by while your people murdered a 16-year-old boy whose only crime was being too smart for your comfort." The Emperor was quiet for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want my son back. Since I can't have that, I'll settle for justice." Justice or revenge? It was a good question. For 3 months, Hana had been asking herself the same thing. Every time she ordered another strike against Empire targets, every time she watched Velthran ships burn, she wondered if she was seeking justice for her son or just satisfying her own need for vengeance. "Surrender unconditionally," she said. "Hand over everyone involved in the systematic oppression of humanity. Submit to war crimes trials. Accept the dissolution of your empire and the redistribution of your territories to the species you've oppressed." "And if I refuse?" Hana smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Then I activate the remaining gravity disruptors we've placed around your core worlds, and you can spend the rest of your life floating in space watching your civilization die." "You're bluffing. You don't have that many weapons. Would you like to test that theory?" "We had 30 years to prepare for this war, Your Majesty." "Do you really think we only built a dozen disruptors?" The transmission ended. On the fortress world below, Hana could see defensive systems powering up. Ships launching from hidden hangars, orbital weapons platforms rotating to target her fleet. "All ships," she broadcast to her fleet. "The Emperor has chosen to fight. Show them what happens when you threaten human children." The battle for Kithra lasted 6 hours and became known as the finest example of human military engineering in galactic history. The fortress world's defenses were impressive. Layers of energy shields, thousands of automated weapon platforms, and a defending fleet of over 100 ships. But Hana's fleet had been designed specifically for this moment. Ships that could become invisible to sensors, weapons that could punch through any armor, and tactics that had been perfected through dozens of smaller battles. The key was Tay's gravitational technology, not just the large disruptors that could disable planets, but smaller versions built into every human weapon. Missiles that could phase through shields, energy beams that could bend around defensive barriers, and mines that could alter local gravity to trap enemy ships. When the fortress world's shields finally failed, Hana's ships didn't bombard the surface. Instead, they deployed thousands of small gravity disruptors around the planet. Within minutes, every weapon system, every power generator, and every communication array simply stopped working. The planet was conquered without a single civilian casualty. In the fortress command center, Emperor Veltar sat in darkness, surrounded by dead screens and useless computers. When human soldiers finally reached him, he was still sitting in his command chair staring at nothing. "Veltar of the Velthran Empire," said the human sergeant who led the arrest team. "You're under arrest for crimes against humanity and violation of galactic law." "What galactic law?" the Emperor asked wearily. "We were the galactic law." "Not anymore. The trial took place on New Geneva, a human world that had been transformed into a temporary galactic capital. Representatives from 47 species came to witness the proceedings. Many of them were species that had been under Velthran control for centuries and were eager to see justice done. Hana testified for 3 days, presenting evidence of the Empire's systematic oppression, not just of humanity, but of dozens of other species. The slow poisoning, the assassination of scientists and inventors, the suppression of technological development, and the deliberate weakening of potential rivals. When it was over, the tribunal reached its verdict. The Valthran Empire was guilty of genocide, crimes against sapient beings, and violation of basic galactic rights. The punishment was complete dissolution. The Empire's territories would be redistributed to their original inhabitants or placed under the protection of a new galactic council. War criminals would serve life sentences on prison worlds, and the Valthran military would be permanently disbanded. But the hardest decision came after the trial. Hana stood in the memorial garden that had been built in Ty's honor, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. A small stone marker bore his name and the words, "He died so that others might live free." Dr. Mira Song found her there, as she did most evenings. "The council wants you to be the first Secretary General," Mira said. "I know. You'd be good at it. The galaxy needs someone who understands both justice and strength." Hana nodded but didn't answer. The new Galactic Council would be humanity's greatest achievement, a government that existed to protect smaller species from larger ones, to ensure that no empire could ever again crush those who threatened their power. But it would also mean giving up her quest for complete vengeance. Several of Ty's killers had died in the war, but others remained in prison rather than executed. The Valthran species would survive, diminished but not extinct. "What would he want me to do?" she asked, touching the memorial stone. "He'd want you to build something better," Mira said. "He always believed in making things better, not just destroying what was wrong." 6 months later, Secretary General Hana Kill stood before the Galactic Assembly to give her first address. Representatives from 93 species filled the Great Hall, including a small delegation of Valthrans who had renounced their old empire. "My son died because he dared to be exceptional," she began. "He was killed by those who believed that keeping others weak was the only way to stay strong. Today we establish a new principle, that every species has the right to grow, to learn, to become the best version of themselves." The Tai Doctrine, as it became known, was simple. No species could suppress the technological, cultural, or philosophical development of another. Any attempt to do so would be met with the combined force of the Galactic Defense Network. The enforcement arm of this new law was humanity. The species that had once been considered weak and primitive now commanded the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. Not to conquer, but to protect. Not to rule, but to serve as guardians of freedom. In her private office that night, Hana sat at her desk writing her daily report. On the wall hung a picture of Tay smiling his brilliant smile. Next to it was a technical diagram of his gravity disruptor, the weapon that had changed the galaxy. "I kept my promise," she said to the picture. "I made them pay for what they did to you. But more than that, I made sure it can never happen again." Outside her window, ships from dozens of species moved through the space lanes around New Geneva. Human ships escorted them, protecting traders and diplomats and scientists as they carried knowledge and culture to every corner of the galaxy. The empire that had killed her son was gone. In its place was something better, a civilization where being smart and creative and exceptional was celebrated, not feared. Tai would have been proud, as Hana finished her work and prepared to leave the office. Her communicator chimed with a message from the exploration fleet. They had discovered 3 new species on the galactic rim, all eager to join the galactic community. Hana smiled and began composing her response.